It's about the choice of materials, the carpets, the leathers, the stitching. And I'd like to be able to just remove all of that with the touch of a button. Closes electronically, never have to hear one of your doors being slammed again. Remember Infiniti, the luxury Japanese arm of Nissan that said it was going to come to Australia and take on the might of what had become Lexus in this country. Infiniti had 2 cracks at it as well, and both of those cracks failed, it would be fair to say. Well, this is the Genesis GV80 specifically, but Genesis is to Hyundai what Infiniti was to Nissan in Australia and what Lexus is to Toyota. That is a luxury arm and upscale arm of an already existing brand in this country. Now, for any brand to think it's going to come here and topple the might of Lexus is a huge ask, because Australians have a particular affinity with that brand and a particular love for the product. But we thought from the outset that Genesis had done a fantastic job with high quality product at the right price. Now it's time to take a look at the GV80, large luxury SUV from Genesis, and an SUV that we've spent the last 3 or 4 months with. There's a lot to like about the Genesis GV80, and what stands out as an appealing SUV grows on you the more time you spend with it. Luxury touches such as soft closed doors make for a premium experience, but that's also true of the leather trim, the fit and finish, and the quality of the infotainment system as well. Opt for the 6-seater, as we had on test, and you get wireless charging in the second row as well. The smoothness of the driving experience is another highlight that was noted by everyone who drove it during our time with it. If you're shopping in this segment and the Genesis GV80 appeals to you, you're probably also looking at the BMW X5, Mercedes-Benz GLE, the Audi Q7 and Q8 siblings, and the Lexus RX. And remember, you'll find vehicles like the GV80 or similar on Drive Marketplace. Now, if you're anything like me, you hate your doors being slammed on your car, especially if you've spent the sort of money that you have to spend on a luxury SUV. GV80's got something to combat that though, and we love this feature on any car. Soft closed doors. Let it go like that, closes electronically, never have to hear one of your doors being slammed again. The first thing we'd like to address in the cabin is something that we'd like your feedback on, so leave your comments in the comments section below. Does the 6-seat layout work for you? Are we so fixated on a 7 or an 8-seat cabin that we don't quite understand a 6-seat layout, or it just doesn't make sense to us? I'd love your feedback on that particular one. I quite like it, especially in the second row, because those 2 seats back there feel like you're sitting in luxurious single-seaters like you do in the front row, whereas usually in the second row, you'd be sitting on a bench. So let us know what you think about that in the comments section below. Now, the factor inside the cabin that I think is a real Genesis strong point is the sense of luxury and quality. If you're going to come into a segment like this, if you're going to take on a brand like Lexus, as we've discussed many times before, one of the key areas, a critical area of doing something with a vehicle like that in this segment is the execution of the cabin. It's about the choice of materials, the carpets, the leathers, the stitching, all of those things, the surfaces, everything that you touch here inside the cabin, the fit and finish. And then, of course, that sense of quiet inside the cabin. And when you do this, when you get out of the car, get back in, you thud that door closed, this is a really quiet, insulated and refined place to be. We'll talk about that a little bit more while we're driving. In terms of the equipment that you get, I think Genesis have done a beautiful job of laying out the cabin of the GV80. The steering wheel controls might look complex initially. There's a lot there, but once you work it out, it's quite simple and they work really well. This level of control through here, which is haptic, which controls the main things for the infotainment system, like if you want to go to the map or you want to go to the navigation inputs or the radio and so on, that's haptic through there. And then, of course, heating, ventilation and air conditioning, fantastic. It's all haptic. It all works really well. It's responsive to touch. It does what you want it to do. Easy to understand as well. And then, of course, you've got the area down here where the wireless charger is. What I like about that is you can put your phone in and you can even close that door if you want. Keeps it out of the way. But you've got your USB-C charger and then input for the infotainment system. And, of course, that nifty Genesis UV cleaning thing that it goes through as well. I still haven't done that yet. Been driving the car for months now. I still haven't done it. But it's a clever little addition anyway. And that brings us then to the center console area. The positioning of this armrest is great. Quite a shallow bin there. The position's great in terms of where you drive. And the gear selector dial. I know why Genesis has done it. I know why the designers and the engineers wanted to opt for this. What it does is it cleans this area up and you don't have a big gear shifter sitting there that you need to access. But even after months of driving the car, this still isn't really intuitive. I still have to stop and think when I'm doing a 3-point turn or reverse parking, where it is, how to use it. Is it in reverse? Is it back in drive? Have I selected the right gear? But for me, I'm a bit of a traditionalist and I'd prefer a regular gear shifter. However, another positive is the fact that that control center is there and the bottle holders, cup holders are over that side. So they're out of the way. They don't get in your way when you're trying to access the gear shift, which I think is important. In terms of infotainment, huge screens. It has to be said, when we first got the GV80, there was a glitch with the control center, the brain that runs that infotainment system. That was replaced for all GV80 owners under warranty. Since then, faultless. Very quick to respond to inputs. You plug your smartphone in. I prefer the cabled connection. It works immediately. All of the system functionality is great. We've had no issues with that at all. Heated and cooled seats make a massive difference. We've been driving this car right through a very sticky Aussie summer. Cooled seats make a massive difference. And just that whole sense of luxury and the ambience here in the cabin is fantastic. I think Genesis has done an amazing job of building and designing in the first place, but then executing and building an SUV that can really take the fight, not just to Lexus, but to some of the more established competition in the luxury market. And if you're driving the GV80 at all times, you feel like you're behind the wheel of a very premium product. And I think that is key for the type of buyer who's looking at this SUV. That limousine-like feeling really does translate back here, even if there's not quite as much room as you might have pictured from the outside of the GV80, because this is a big SUV. What you can do, and keep in mind that is my driving position there. So the scallops in the back of the seat here mean I'm still pretty comfortable. I can get my feet under that front seat. I've got plenty of room here. I don't feel uncomfortable at all. This seat that I'm sitting in is adjustable, so I can slide it forward. I can put the backrest back like that, tilt the seat up and down. I've got plenty of movement, so it's pretty comfortable. The other thing you can do, which I think is really clever, is you can move this seat forward if you need to. So for passengers in the second row, you can quite easily move that seat forward. You've got air conditioning controls. You've got ventilated seats back here and heated, of course, like the front. You've got power outputs, vents, all sorts of stuff back here. Vanity mirrors up there as well that are lit. You've got a second sunroof there. You've got cup holders and storage, wireless charging, and another UV cleaner for the phone back here as well. This really does feel like business class, I guess, on an expensive plane flight, but it's very comfortable. And again, that sense of insulation, I guess, that you feel in the front row, you certainly feel in the second row when you're a passenger. One of the other very few negatives, and we really did scratch our head as a team to try to come up with negatives for the GV, because it's a very well executed large SUV. There are no top tethers in the third row. So if you need to put baby seats into the car, you need to consider that as well. But in terms of amenity, ambience, comfort, quality, all of the things that we mentioned in the front part of the cabin, they're all present back here for passengers, which I think is key, because you're buying an SUV of this size and this capability. I think because you're using this second row quite regularly, it's here that that 6-seat layout comes into its own, because I'm in my own seat. I've got armrests. It's really comfortable through here, and it feels like a really nice seat, not a bench to sit on. So I do think that feeling of quality from the front row translates through into the second. If you've enjoyed this long-term video, please let the YouTube gods know by commenting, liking, and subscribing to our channel. As with any luxury car, there's a lot to be assessed when it gets to this, behind the wheel, when you're driving. Now, we're on a pretty smooth stretch of road at the moment, it has to be said, but this is incredibly quiet, refined, luxurious, and comfortable. And I think there's a lot of things that play into that sense that you get behind the wheel in this car. Things like the leather seats, they're heated and cooled, the air conditioning system, the insulation inside the cabin, all play into that because that changes the environment that you're in and makes a big difference. So I think they are a factor worth mentioning. But the smoothness of the petrol engine and the gearbox, they make a big difference as well, because the actual drive experience, the relationship between the accelerator pedal and what the engine's doing, the steering wheel, the braking, all of those things, very smooth, and they feel premium. That chiming that you can hear, that's one of the very few negatives of this SUV. There's a lot of warning chimes, noises, bings and bongs, as we call them in the drive office, and they do get a little bit annoying, it has to be said. Now, of course, you can turn them off, some of them off, and you've got to go into menu systems and create shortcuts and do things like that, and you can switch them off, but I'd prefer it if you didn't have to, and I think sometimes they just interrupt your experience a little bit. There's one that will tell you you're coming up to a school zone even when you're outside school hours. And what it does is it goes over the top of your podcast, for argument's sake, if you're listening to that. So it speaks over the top of that, mutes that down, and keeps reminding you as you go through that 40 zone, even if it's a Sunday morning, for argument's sake. So that can get a little bit annoying, especially when it's happening regularly. And you can hear, this thinks we're in a school zone now, but it's 12 o'clock, it's in the middle of the day. It thinks we're in a school zone, so it's chiming because I'm doing 50 in what it thinks is a 40 zone. Does get a little bit in your face, I guess, and I'd like to be able to just remove all of that with the touch of a button. We've talked a bit about the engine and fuel use, 4,783.9 kilometres to be exact, and this is used 12 litres per 100 across that whole time. So in effect, for a large luxury SUV, it's not actually that thirsty. I mean, if this was hybrid, it'd probably be using 6 or 7 litres per 100 kilometres, but 12 litres for a vehicle of this size, this capability, this comfort level, the amount of space it's got, I think is actually acceptable. But you do end up filling it up quite regularly because the fuel tank itself is a little bit smaller than you might expect for a large vehicle. Now, another thing that has got, and you can hear that bonging going off again, it's really quite annoying regularly when it's doing it. And it happens when you're going 1 kilometre over the speed limit, which is pretty easy to do. You're not actually speeding like an idiot, you've just gone 1k over, and it's pretty easy to do. And then it's making a little bit of noise. The other thing that's really worth noting about the GV80 that I think is critical for a luxury vehicle is the way that it rides. This has got big wheels, low profile tyres, but its ability to soak up bumps and remain comfortable on any road surface is genuinely impressive. This is a really lovely large SUV to drive when you're behind the wheel. And I think the kind of person who buys this type of SUV, obviously, as most of us do, is spending a lot of their time around town. But you're going to go out on the open road, you're going to load the family up, you're going to go on road trips and weekends away. So it's critical that this is able to handle bumpy, uneven road surfaces comfortably and do it without feeling too firm and too hard. And the GV80 does exactly that. All in all, it's a lovely vehicle to drive. It's a really enjoyable SUV to spend time in, whether you're driver or passenger. And that remains true whether you're in the front row or the second row. If you're not too tall, the third row works as well. It's genuinely comfortable to spend your time in, and this makes a lot of sense for Australian buyers, family buyers, who have got the budget to shop in the luxury SUV segment. So there are our thoughts of the Genesis GV80. Now, a couple of things to mention again as we wrap this up. We have spoken about the fact that this is thirsty, but looking through the historical average on this car, we've done nearly 5,000 kilometres, 4,700 and something, and it's 12 litres per 100 across that whole 4,700 kilometres. So that's actually not that bad for a large luxury SUV. I suspect the fact that the fuel tank is small or smaller than it otherwise might be means that you feel like you're going back to the service station a little bit more regularly, especially when you're driving largely in traffic around town. Now, we've also said a couple of times as well, that to look for negatives with this car, you're nitpicking a little bit. You really are, because this is a well-executed luxury SUV, and there's really not a lot that's wrong with it when you're being objective about it. No car is perfect, of course, and there are a couple of little things that we'd change, but overall, after a few months with this Genesis GV80, it's a lovely vehicle to drive, and it was a car that whenever it was in the Drive garage, the Drive review team always wanted to drive it. It was never a chore to have to get in it. Even though it's big, you do get used to that. It was never a chore to spend time with this SUV. Let us know what you think in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit like if you've enjoyed the video. Click on subscribe so you can stay up to date with all of our latest video content, and of course the full review of the Genesis GV80. That's over at Drive.com.au.